As guitar players, one of the most fun and rewarding things we can do is prey on the insecurities of bass players. So today I want to talk a little bit about how you can fundamentally use some principles of playing bass guitar to match maybe like a chord progression on guitar or something like that. Now, it might actually be a more useful video to talk about the relationship between bass and drums or percussion, but that might be a different video. Right now we're just going to kind of talk about how we can use the principles of a root note, a fifth, and an octave to follow what a guitar thing is doing if maybe you have to like sit in on a gig or something like that, right? Now, all joking aside, bass is actually a very nuanced instrument, and to really master it takes just as much precision as anything else, but we're going to kind of simplify it and just bring it down to a couple notes and the bare minimum of what you need to do to just fill a certain sonic space and kind of mesh with another instrument, right? So again, what I mean by a root note and a fifth, basically, if we look at, if you don't know, most bass guitars have 4 or 5 strings, and on a 4th string, like this one, it's tuned to most of the time to the exact same thing a regular standard guitar is tuned, so E, A, D, and G, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend there is a guitar player playing just a G chord, right? A G major chord. And a G on a bass is going to be the 3rd fret of the low E string, right? So, just like a guitar so far. In fact, a lot of the same riffs you can do on a guitar, you can play in the exact same way on a bass. So right now, we're going to follow a G major chord with a root note. So the bare minimum that you can do if somebody's playing a G chord is just play the pulse of a G note. Just like that, right? Now, to kind of step it up a little bit, you're going to add the fifth. So if you don't know what a fifth is, I did another video on power chords to kind of explain that in a little more detail. But we're going to assume that you know the fifth note of any key or any note is going to be down a string, back 2 frets, right? So if this is my root note on G, the fifth, G, A, B, C, D, is going to be the 5th fret of the A string. So root note and it's 5th. 1, 5. And again, we get that from the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the 8 is something I want to talk about too. This is an octave, right? If you really want to just kind of do the bare minimum on a bass, just follow along with the chords, playing the root, the 5th, and the octave. You can kind of do some cool stuff just kind of by manipulating the pulse of it, right? So I'm going to do a guitar loop in a second to kind of demonstrate this, but let's just say there's some kind of music going on in the background that has a progression of G major, D major, B minor. You just start out finding those notes, right? There's a G to a D to a B, which is the 7th fret on the low E string, right? So the minimum you could do is just 1, 2, 3, 4 to D to the B, right? Now, the next addition you could make would be to add the 5th. D, B. Okay? And then after that, you could add the octave. Okay? All I'm doing is just kind of jumping around and pulsing those different notes and playing them in kind of like a rhythmic and percussive way, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a different example where I'm going to set up a guitar loop, and then I'm going to demonstrate how you can use simple methods to follow along with. So I'm going to lay down a kind of busy guitar part. The progression is going to be F, technically an F major 7, and then I'm going to go to an E flat major 7 to a B flat major 7. So we're thinking of this in the key of B flat. So the loop is going to sound like this. Alright, so let's find the root note for each of those. We can start with this F right here, which is the 8th fret on the A string, right? And then so we have this F and its 5th. Now, another cool thing about bass is you can actually, if you're rooting on the A string, you can play the 5th below, which is just up a string, right? So here's an F, its 5th is a C. You can play it here, you can play it here. Then we're going to go back 2 frets to the E flat, and then we're going to go up a string to the B flat, right? So all I'm going to be using is a root, a 5th, below, or an octave. So with the loop, I'm going to start by playing just the root note over and over again, right? So And now the cool thing is, if you notice this, we kind of have this little pattern of 1, 5, 8, just in this area. Now, since this is all going to be kind of staying in the same key for the most part, we can use the fifth and the octaves of previous chords, right? So let's kind of focus on, here's the F, there's the C, this note right here. If I get to the second chord, I can play the 1 and the 5 and kind of go back into the prior chord's fifth, right? So you could be like, so I went from a 1 to a 5 into another chord's fifth, right? So if we kind of start adding notes from other chords in the same riff, we can get a little busier. So really, as long as you know the root note of the chord, you always have something that you can do on bass, just by getting to the root and adding the fifth. It doesn't even matter if it's major or minor, because major and minor chords have the same fifth. It's the third that separates them. So I'll probably do maybe another video kind of like getting more into playing a little more melodically and like using modes and stuff like that too. But for just an intro and kind of moving around the neck, just follow those root notes, add the 5 and add the 8, and it's gonna sound great.